Okay, we are live. We're back. Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to give you an update on the housing market, but from a different perspective. Excuse me. Um, so there have been some headlines in the news about how the housing market has started to have an impact on the rentals. And what's happening is that people are getting squeezed out. In my previous videos, I've talked about the affordability wall. Well, more and more people are running into that, right? Um, they want to buy houses, they want to buy a home for themselves, but they can't afford it. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. And now people are looking to alternative housing, and rental is becoming a topic of conversation. I talked in my previous video on the housing market about how a Seattle couple pays $60,000 above market for a townhome. That's not a rental, but that's moving in that direction. And so we need to talk about that, especially if you're in the housing market and you're frustrated and you don't know what's happening. These headlines are a little bit scary. I want to dive on into, the causal factors. Let's look at the data. Let's look at what's happening. And I'll try to give you an indication of what is likely to happen in the future. So if you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? You're not quite ready to buy. Rents are going up. What do you do? Let's talk about that. Okay. So there was a story basically saying exactly what I'm telling you now, which is, basically there's nothing to buy, nothing to rent. Some Americans are stuck in housing limbo, and it's talking about this couple. Um, so this lady, Rebecca DiLorenzo, had her rent raised by $300 a month in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. She lives there with her fiance Kyle, and when her landlord, said a $300 a month increase, right? Of course, she started looking for another place to buy or another place to rent because that's what I would have done. And just like other couples, they're saying our mindset last spring was we're getting married, we need to buy a house, and for a while we were going to open houses every weekend, but the market was just getting crazier and crazier. Yeah, a lot of people out there, millions of people, certainly hundreds of thousands of people are feeling the squeeze, right? They know exactly what she's talking about. So she bid uh, for 4 houses, um, got outbid by as much as 50,000. Just like I said, the other couple in Seattle, right? I did that video. They had to bid $60,000 a market, and they thought it was a deal. They felt a sense of relief. They finally have a place to live, right? And so she knew that she needed a plan B. Quote, we didn't want to stay in our rental because it would have cost almost double what a mortgage would have been. But we also didn't want to buy a house we really couldn't afford. Now, that's a pain that many people are feeling out there, right? Um, a mortgage can be lower than rental just because, the payment for the debt is spread out over 30 years, right? And of course, interest rates right now are very low. So in terms of the monthly payment, right, it can be enticing because it's higher than the rent, right? And you get the feeling, hey, I'm paying rent and I don't even own this building. I'm helping the landlord buy this building, right? Incidentally, on my own personal side, that's also, well, it's certainly part of the reason why I bought my condo, right? But right now, this newlywed couple is feeling priced out of both the sales and the rental market, and they are now living with family, right? So I sympathize with him. I'm sure there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people or couples out there who are experiencing the same dilemma, right? And what's really happening here, reading from the article again, availability is limited across the board, said Jay Parsons, Deputy Chief Economist for RealPage, a leading provider of home rental analytics. Apartment occupancy is now at the highest level in at least 3 decades, and it's a similar story in single-family rentals, right? When we dig into the data, you'll find that, in fact, demand for single-family rentals is very, very high, likely the highest right now. And we're talking about rentals, not homes, right? And it's clearly also being driven by the pandemic, right? So, oh, here, okay. Let me continue on with the story. So, the rental market is getting really, really crazy, right? It's quoting an agent, um, Bray, and he's saying, "quote This apartment went from 5,000 to 5,500, then to 5,700, and then 5,800, and then 5,900. So every day, my client was waking up and seeing it was costing more. We ended up getting it in July for a little over $6,200. Is that per month? I guess that's incredible. That's insane. Um, and that's exactly what the agent is saying. Quote, things started turning around in April as the city reopened, and now everything's going in a New York minute, said Brown Harris's Stevens Justine Bray, who has worked in real estate in the city for 27 years. Quote, it's insane. It is insane. That is just ridiculous pricing. And I can see why people are interested in going for a mortgage instead, but it's bad out there. So to quote another agent, it's gonna highlight what's being said here. What we're seeing right now in the for sale housing market is likely a sign of things to come in rental housing later this year, Parsons said, where the market goes from really, really hot to just merely hot, right? So there you have it. That's a really, really sad story. I don't want to seem like I'm gloating, but I'm so happy that I bought my own place years ago. So that is a dilemma being faced by millions of people all across this country. And first, we have to ask ourselves, what's happening here? Why is this happening? Let's dig into the numbers and let's get a sense of what might be the future of rentals. I'm going to talk about that as part of my conclusion at the end of this video. So first, let's dive into the data. Okay, so this is data from Jumper Report, right? That's actually, this company was quoted in that news article. And you see, this is national rent growth in median price over the course of the pandemic. 1 bedroom versus 2 bedroom. We're talking again, this is rental, right? And you can see the increase. I mean, it's just a shot straight up to the sky, right? The landlord in the article was talking about a 300 per month increase. I'm sure that's not unusual, or it might not even be that much at this point, right? And so, yeah, I mean, with the bleed over from the housing market, just like that newlywed couple, people are realizing, hey, you know what? Nothing makes sense right now, right? We need a home, but we don't have the money to buy, right? And then, of course, like the Seattle couple, they started looking at townhouses, and then they started looking at other alternatives. They're looking at rental, and even rental is being impacted by this demand for space, this demand for housing. Okay, so looking at some examples of different rental markets, right? New York City typically is the highest, and you see some of the most expensive markets. It's New York, San Francisco, Boston, San Jose, Washington, Los Angeles. No surprise here. I live in Orange County. I drive about 45 miles to LA. I know the rent conditions. I have friends who are in real estate in LA, and they're telling me that it's getting bad over there too, right? Oakland, San Diego, Miami, all the usual suspects. So look at that. Los Angeles, San Diego, Santa Ana. Just look at how many of those top cities, top rental markets are California. Well, everybody wants to live here, And I know there's been talk about a mass exodus of people leaving California. I can assure you, based on actual survey data, that's really not true. There has been no mass exodus. I should probably do a video on that. But anyways, to get even further into the data, you can see, what's happening in all the rental markets. So what are we seeing here? This is the difference in rent between San Francisco and New York. And in February 2019, there is a substantial difference, right? Um, so New York was much higher, but as so this is San Francisco rent okay, so sorry, this is San Francisco rent minus New York rent. So actually, San Francisco was actually higher, right, at the time. Um, but New York is catching up, and you saw in the other chart that now it's number one. So with this big push from the housing market, because everything's getting red hot, right? You can see this steep climb, starting to recover in February 2020. That's pretty much when the pandemic hit, and everything has been a downward slide, right? So in that sense, the rental market has become nationalized by the pandemic. The need for more space, and then the heating up of the real estate market, the housing market, single family homes, and now the rental market, right? So speaking more about the rental market, let's oh yeah, before getting to that, I just want to give you a heads up. The top rental markets that are rising and the ones that are falling. If you happen to be in one of these areas, well, I suppose you're lucky, and then of course here you've got percentage increases, so um, there are markets out there where it's not going up in insane amount, but typically the larger metropolitan areas are seeing big increases. So what's really going on here? Okay. So this is a report from Emerging Trends in Real Estate Surveys. I remember I was saying that the demand for single family um, is high. So this chart is an apartment buy, hold, and sell recommendation. And so what this really means is that if you're looking at these particular types of rental properties, let's say single family rental, moderate income, lower income apartments, senior housing, high income apartments, etc., etc. This report is making buy or sell recommendations based on the projected future demand. By future demand, we're talking about people who are wanting to rent these properties, right? And look at what type of rental property is number one, single family rental. That matches precisely with the data that we're seeing in the real estate market. In the housing market, single family homes are red hot. People want to move their families into bigger spaces because of the pandemic. They're going down into urban areas where they can afford some of the housing, driving prices up through the roof, quite frankly. And now that same consideration is sliding over to the rental market. And so, yeah. And then, of course, moderate income apartments. That's probably, it's the same bleed over. People are looking for deals on the rental because, well, it's going up, right? It's going up, right? So, what is also happening in the rental market is that up to 2018, builders have been wanting to target high-income households, because the demand is basically where it's at. If you see this green line right here, I'm sorry, this orange line, which is the 75,000 and over. That's household income. The demand for housing up to 2018, builders were really building, a luxury rental apartments. That probably didn't help when the pandemic hit, because they're really expensive and people are looking for deals. So, yeah. So what's going to happen into the future? Let me enlarge this a little bit. So this is, this is an index of apartment property prices. You can think of it as inflation, an inflation measure of apartment properties, right? And so up to 2009, around 2008, 2000 okay, so 2007, there was a recession. We know about the housing market imploding, and 2010 is starting to recover. You know, um, and so it's going up. Housing prices have continued. I'm sorry, prices for apartment properties have continued to rise since 2010, and there is no reason to think that this trend is going to slow down. In fact, it's uh, it's going to accelerate beyond what you're seeing in this chart right here, because this goes up to 2019, and we have no reason to think that 2020 is any different. People thought that with the pandemic and the lockdown, the housing market would implode, that it was going to go down because no one can move. But in fact, the opposite happened, because people were saying, I'm out of here, out of these big cities with crammed people together, with no social distancing. I'm going out to the suburbs. I want more space, right? And so with apartment property prices rising, and then the new surge of demand coming. Look, I wish I could give you some good news, but chances are the bleed out from the housing market to the rental is going to continue for up to this year, probably sometime into 6 months of next year. So if you're in a buying mode, if you're deliberating between a mortgage and a rental, and you're wondering whether rental is going to maybe stabilize or go down, and or something, there might be some signs of hope. I just don't see that. I don't think that's likely at all. I'm going to say 90% chance that it continues to rise. It's going to continue to heat up, right? Because what's happening is there's a wave that's coming over from the housing market in hopes of finding some type of housing, and they're moving over to rental options. So like that agent said at the article, the rental market is starting to get hotter and hotter, because of this wave. And so no, I don't think rental prices are going down anytime soon. So it's a very difficult position if you're like that couple where the housing prices are simply unaffordable, and you look at rental prices and it's starting to go up and up again. You're really in a dilemma. They move back with their homes. I don't know what options are available to you, but all I can do as an economist is to tell you what are the reasonable expectations for the future in terms of price increases. Housing market, it's not going down anytime soon. Rental market, consequently, is starting to heat up, and that's simply the state of the economy right now. So I wish I could be more positive, but I got to tell you the truth. So anyways, I hope that was at least clarifying for you in terms of what you can expect in the future. So oh, by the way, so yeah, if you like the content, please give me a like, possibly even subscribe. It really helps with the algorithm, because I'm trying to spread decent quality economic analysis without all the breathless hype and all that. And I would hope that you could help me on this mission. So until then, I'll see you in the next video.